It's an Aretha Franklin song, isn't it?
God.
Chain. Rust on those chains. So.
Oh,
Mm.
sorry, Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Hello and welcome to the Noizze Podcast, sponsored by Stereo Brain Records and brought to you as part of the Noizze Podcast Network. Kris and Sam are back in episode 119. Ignore Kris when he says episode 118. He is entirely wrong and a little bit rusty. The lads are back reviewing the new In Flames record. Don't forget you can follow the Noizze Podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Noizze Podcast Network. You can find the website on most social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Noizze UK, and follow all of the things that we're doing outside of the podcast there as well. We'll have our regular commencement of shows coming back to you in the next couple of months throughout the year, as well as some amazing additions that we've got planned as well, so keep tuned for that. We're on YouTube and all streaming platforms, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share. Every little goes a long way. Enjoy the episode.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 118 of the Noizze Podcast, part of the Noizze Podcast Network, and brought to you by noizze.co.uk. I am your host / your boy, Chris Pure, and I'm joined as ever, and once again, by my very good friend and Mr. Cynical himself, Samuel Lewis. Mate, how are we?
We're not too bad. We've started the year pretty well. It's good to be back on this, though. Almost felt weird. So I had to dust off some of the microphone and sort of like there was spiders, cobwebs under my chair and everything. It was nice. It was nice to get back on it.
Yeah, man, first one of these in a while. In fact, I believe the last proper episode was actually me and Jack doing Dayseeker's album. I don't think me and you have done a podcast together since we reviewed Slipknot's latest album, The End So Far. We were doing Lamb of Gods, and if you remember, Lamb of Gods review cut out on us halfway through, which was a painful experience. In fact, it wasn't even halfway through. It was like we were like 9/10 of the way through the episode, and the recording just completely disappeared. Man, that was painful. So yeah, this is the first time me and you have sat down to review an album in, let's say, 4 months, but that's not the only thing that Noizze has been doing. I want to congratulate you, mate, on first thing on the podcast for the way you hosted the Noizze Meets Bangers and Mosh Crew.
Oh, that's really nice of you.
Noisy quiz, man. That was amazing, man. I thought you did such a brilliant job. I was for those listening, I was originally down to host it. I was incredibly ill. On over that weekend. It would have been a terrible idea for me to even attempt the 3-hour train to Cardiff to record an episode and then a 3-hour train back the next day. That would have just been a heinous experience. But you didn't. Who needed me, man? You absolutely smashed it, man. So proud of you.
Oh, you're too kind. I just tried to do a good Kris impression, and then it sort of all came out. So I became funny and charismatic very quickly. I also had an awful train journey back. It makes you feel better. Oh my God. Because we went straight out afterwards and I had to leave my bag in Jack's car, watched France beat England in Cardiff, which I don't know if anyone listens to this knows. Not a fan of the English, the Welsh. So that was kind of an interesting experience. By interesting, I mean soul crushing in the worst possible way. And then wearing the same clothes as the day before, I had to get a train back. Very hungover, bag on chest, just hating life, hating
the big
life.
Sting.
The big sting, mate. The big sting.
Man. Less about us and more about what we actually do. For that, this might be the first time you've ever heard us. We're a rock and metal podcast. We're sponsored by Stereo Brain Records. You can follow us on Twitter at Noizze Podcast / at Noizze UK if you want to follow the general website handle. And the best way to support us is by liking, subscribing, or following, depending on whichever service you use. As you can see by the title of this episode today, we are going to talk about the new In Flames record, Forgone. Now, Sam, usually we do the big contextual discussion, that kind of thing. Don't really think that's going to be massively necessary for In Flames. The same when we recorded the Slipknot review. I kind of feel like if you're listening to this, you already know a fair bit about In Flames, and you don't need me and Sam to speak about them for 15 minutes. So, Sam, I think we should just get straight into this record.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, if you've clicked on an In Flames review that has like 200 views, I'm going to guess you're a big In Flames fan. So,
First of all,
you know
thank
what I
you for
mean?
that. 201
Yeah,
views means a lot to us.
imagine cycling for the first 17 reviews to find ours.
And the other 16 were
You're
definitely better than
really
this.
interested in flames, and then you click on us, and then it's like in flames formed in 2003. And it's like, what the fuck? I was reading the Wikipedia article out. No wonder it's got only 9 people are watching this at the same time. Like, I completely understand. So yeah, you're right. Answer that question. Yeah, I think I'm with you.
Let's go. Forgone is a Swedish metal giant's 14th Lord studio record and a follow-up to 2019's Either Mask. It's out on February 10th via Nuclear Blast Records. Sam, we literally just said we're not going to do a big contextual discussion, but I am just curious before we start this review, where you think In Flames fit into metal in 2022, because I'm not sure I refer to them as like a classic legacy act at this point. But they're also a really sizable historic band. So I'm just curious where exactly they fit on the scales. You know, me and you have this kind of ranking order of metal bands, like the A-listers is like Metallica, Iron Maiden, etc. And then the B-list is like Machine Head, Trivium. I'm not sure if In Flames fit into that because historically they're like a really great metal band, but also we wouldn't put them in the A list, but we're not going to call them a legacy band. So for you, where do they kind of fit into metal in 2022?
I think that's a really good question. I was listening to this pod the other day, and they were talking about where like athletes fit into the same kind of question. And this guy came with this really interesting point, and he's like, if you're doing the Hall of Fame for a sport, can you tell the story of the sport without that player? Can
Right,
the
yeah.
events be told without them? And
Yeah,
so
I'm into
I'd like to apply that to In Flames here. Can you tell the story of metal without In Flames? And I would say no. I would say that they were really impactful on this second wave of metalcore, and
yeah.
a really big turning point for that mid 2000s metal scene. Without which we might not have had the same type of reignition. Now, like you say, am I going to say In Flames, Iron Maiden, Metallica? Of course not. Am I going to say Trivium, Avenged Sevenfold, Parkway Drive, In Flames? Now, there's someone already listening to this, the In Flames fan that found us. He's probably screaming absolutely yes. And I can accept that. You can talk me into that they are. It's even the phrase second tier sounds really disrespectful, doesn't it? But if you could talk me into anywhere from second or third category of metal, because for me, I see In Flames as kind of like Korn. So Korn are incredibly important for the furthering of a genre. Do I consider Korn absolutely stadium selling metal band? No. Do I consider really Korn a hugely needle turning a metal band in 2022? Perhaps not. In the same way that with In Flames, again, I do really like In Flames. But we had this conversation before about bands like Cannibal Corpse and Carcass. I know what I'm going to get, really. I know what kind of things I'm expecting. And I'm also expecting even the best version of an In Flames record is like, that In Flames record's really good, but it's not going to be like, you know what changed or defined 2023, the new In Flames record. It's not that it's a high floor for In Flames. I think because of their quality, they can't get lower than being just like a good album from a good band that's already important and everything. You know what I mean? Like they can't tarnish their own legacy or reputation. So I'd put them in that second, maybe top of third tier, like second tier. I'd need to like draw like categories or like get a pyramid out or something and really figure it out. But if you say we've talked about the Mount Rushmore, and then you got bands like Lamb of God, Slayer. Are they as big as those? Are they as impactful as those? Probably not. But then we're down to like, are they as impactful of Trivium? Probably more so, really. Did they move the genre forward more than Trivium? They probably have. Can you tell the story of metal more for In Flames than Trivium? I think you can. So historically, they've got a lot of clout. But again, you ask me, like the new Trivium album's coming out in a year or so. I'm definitely more excited for that, and I think that's going to be more impactful. So in a long, rambling way of answering your question that I could have done in about 3 seconds, I'm going to say it's bottom of second tier, top of third. And I also want us to think of In Flames as a really important act in the last 30 years of metal, really.
just before we progress into this review, there's a point I want to make from a really apt comparison you just made there between Corn and In Flames, because Corn and In Flames aren't moving the needle now, but they certainly have. Like Follow the Leader definitely moved the needle, and Clayman by In Flames definitely moved the needle.
Clarity as well. Come Clarity,
yeah,
2006, and that's really impactful for that particular genre at that particular time.
So, as we progress into this review, there's something I really feel like I should make clear for any kind of In Flames superfan that's listening here. Clayman Colony and Come Clarity, the only In Flames records I'm really familiar with. So I can't really speak for their quality post 2006 up to this point. So really for me, after 2006, there's like a 16-year gap for me. I listen to Come Clarity and then it's bang straight to Forgone, which is kind of unusual, but I suppose, In Flames aren't a band I caught on with right away. In Flames are a band I've kind of gone back to and listened to because of their popularity, and I've thought, right, I've searched, which In Flames album should I hear? And they generally talk about Clayman Colony and Come Clarity, and they are 3 great records, by the way. So those are 3 that I've focused on. I've not heard any other record by In Flames. But the first thing I want to talk about, Sam, before we fully get into the review, produced by Howard Benson, who's worked with My Chemical Romance and 3 Days Grace. Now, the second I saw that, Sam, I wondered immediately what exactly. Well, more bemusement, because Come Clarity was the last thing I heard from them, and I would have never guessed that they'd be working with someone who's worked with 3 Days Grace and My Chemical Romance after hearing Come Clarity. So I was quite fascinated there. And Sam, I've got to say, this album very much was thematically a surprise to me because of the clean chorus sections, the at times hard rock bravado that the record brings with it. But let's just talk about what we think about the album immediately. I think this is really, really good. I really, really enjoy listening to this album. I'm really into it.
Yeah, I had 2 reviews prepared for this. So, and both of them came after the record before you're sarcastic. But the first time I heard it, as usual, my initial reaction was like, is this great? I'm not sure it's great. It's pretty good, but it's not great. And then I listened to it yesterday and it really grew on me.
Yeah.
Which for someone like myself who tends to take about a minute and a half to make a judgment and then argues it to the death like I've had it my entire life. It was nice for an album to sort of grow on me in this kind of way. I agree with you that it's a little lighter than I expected. I mean, I'm just going to double check the name. You might correct me even quicker because there's a ballad on this, isn't there?
Yeah, which was fascinating.
There's a ballad on this, and I believe it's not The Great Deceiver. It's a little bit before that. Is it Bleeding Out?
Yes.
And that was like surprising, and the moment I got into this album, I really, really enjoyed it. I thought few general points. I think the album gets better as it goes along. I think
really?
Actually,
I'm amazed you don't like State of Slow Decay.
No, I like it. I just think I'm really into The Deceiver, bro. I think The Deceiver's amazing. I think it's an amazing song. And kind of like, if you were asking me to mentally piece together what I hoped this album sounded like, The Deceiver's kind of everything I wanted because it's got that fast-paced metalcore stuff. The transition riffs are so nice here. The way they're just able to shift from one section of riff work to the other. The guitar works really tight and solid. It maintains a chorus where it doesn't slow down and do big group gang vocals and big melodic type stuff. It kind of keeps it fast-paced, and I really enjoyed that. Now, I like Meet Your Maker a lot. I think Meet Your Maker is really intense and guttural. The blueprints punishing and stuff like that. But like, yeah, as it actually goes on, like the 2-part Forgone, which I think is great, The Great Deceiver, and the groove on In the Dark, that triplicate in the middle is a real highlight for me. Second to, every time this flips to an acoustic guitar, every moment where there's acoustic in this, I'm like, this is amazing. The introduction of this was beautiful. Gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. Gorgeous. There's an acoustic section in the middle of In the Dark where it continues that kind of half beat, kind of dun, 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 kind of like groove, and it does it in like this medieval classic way. Give me that all over the shop. Like, I'm a sucker for a few things. I'm a sucker for clean guitar in metal, acoustic guitar in metal when it's done properly, and then building back to those big harmonies and stuff. I know it sounds really odd, but I actually was surprised by the technicality of the guitar work because I never associated In Flames with the guitar wizardry. Now I knew that it was metalcore, but I always saw them as a band where it's big choruses and there's like a high pitched riff in the background. But I never mentally saw them as the band that has extended guitar solos or like that type of progressive type stuff. Now, like you, my experience with In Flames pretty much ended at the turn of the decade in 2010, really. And because when I was reading Metal Hammer loved them. And 2007, 8, 9, they were massive in, and that kind of restructured. So maybe they've grown more progressive. But what I came away from this album thinking is they're a really talented group of people still. It's really well mixed and recorded. There's 3 or 4 songs in this that I consider legitimately really good, and at least one that I consider really great. And for a 14th album, a band that's in their 3rd decade as a group, for an In Flames fan, I'm not really sure that you can ask for much more here. There's moments in this where I'm like, is this like a 90% as good as last At the Gates record? Like, it was kind of in that category for me.
Well, just bridging off what you mentioned there, Chris Broderick is in the band now from previously of Megadeth. So
that explains a lot,
of
because Chris Broderick is a bad boy.
he is indeed the boy that's bad, and and,
that should be his Twitter bio.
And so again, just linking off what you said, for me, listening to this from the latest album I heard prior to his Come Clarity, this was like a shotgun to the face in terms of surprise for me. Like when I heard the acoustic opening, the beginning of All Things That Will End, as you mentioned, stunning by the way, and then as the State of Slow Decay started, I was like, are they about to do a chorus? And then Bryce Paul, who's the backing vocalist, great by the way, beautiful voice on him. He comes in for this beautiful chorus on State of Slow Decay, and I was like, wow, I didn't see this coming like at all. But the producer, being Howard Benson of My Chemical Romance and 3 Days Grace previously, kind of alluded to that. But I didn't think it'd be like this. And I think there's some real like beautiful skyscraping choruses in this song. You mentioned like Bleeding Out as like the surprising, wow, is this kind of a ballad? I think that's a great song. I do. That unusual church organ sound surrounding the kind of power metal stomp that opens the song. Kind of worried about where he was going to go at first, but then it comes into this like minimalistic kind of technical riff, and it completely shifts the tempo. I feel like we're going to talk about Bryce Paul, the backing vocalist, a fair amount in this review, but really I don't want to take anything away from Anders Freuden, the lead vocalist, who still puts an absolute shift in. I mean, really, he's still got that patented growl that really comes out on in the transmission. His kind of raking scream really kind of comes to fruition in that song, and it just reminds you of everything that was great about Clayman and Colony and Come Clarity. I really like a dialogue in B flat minor as well. It's one of the most it's probably got the most interesting start to a song on the record. It's got this kind of hopscotch leaping riff that floats around a really nice technical beat from Tanner Wayne, the drummer, who puts a tremendous shift on this album in, by the way. It's unusual for you to hear Anders take a quote-unquote backseat on an In Flames record, because you're so used to him, especially me, from what I'd heard of In Flames before, being central to their sound. But a dialogue in B-flat minor is like just really good fun. The chorus is infectious. It's light-hearted. There's a nice gradual build up to the solo in the middle 8. It's just great stuff, man. I just can't picture a world where anyone that's not hardened on In Flames mid 2000s at late 90s sound wouldn't really love this. And when you listen to In the Dark, did you worry that it might rub some people the wrong way, the way that song sounds?
A little. I mean, I was immediately won over by the rhythm of it, though. like that kind of like dun, 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 like love that. Because what I was impressed with overall is the fact that I felt like this album had some versatility. Like there's not a blueprint that was really followed every single time, and I was impressed that sort of showed a little bit of that musical change up. But overall, with that song In the Dark, I really liked it. I liked that it was offbeat, it's sludgy, it was powerful. So the deep vocals on this really impressive. And yeah, it sort of quite cleverly, I think, shifts from a very dark, heavy tune to this kind of melodic section at the end, but it maintains the rhythm and structure of the song in a way. But that doesn't feel like a monumental shift. The transitions here are really well thought out, and it doesn't feel sort of like, all right, now we're a melodic song again. The way that it shifts, the way that it really feeds into that, I think is really, really impressive. And there's so many parts of this that I thought, well, that could go badly, but they do it quite well. Like there's sections of this that I just really, really like the like Forgone doesn't, I don't think, needs to be two different songs. Obviously thematically they're linked in terms of the storytelling of the band, but they're so different that I feel like they could be completely different songs here, and I really, really enjoy it. There's a riff in the opening portion of the second part of Forgone that I think is just absolutely fantastic, and then comes into Pure Light of Mind. Pure Light of Mind is the one where I think people might express some reservations, perhaps.
Yeah,
But
that one goes for it, man. That one definitely goes for the ballad style. That it goes all in, man.
It does. But to be honest, bro, I mean, it kind of sounded like Killswitch Engage's most recent record.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I was listening to it. I was listening to it last night, and I was like, you know what? I fucking love a metal ballad. I do. Like,
it's class.
Mate, give me a good one with like halftime drums and like a big solo and a big chorus. Like, sad. Like, absolutely fine with me. So, I think they took some musical risks here. But they also did it in the right way. So again, I mean, we feel like we had this conversation ad nauseum, like, but you've got to strike a balance between doing what your fans expect and also stretching out where it doesn't feel like a massive sort of drop off either. And that's a hard balance to strike for so many musicians. And some people misjudge that and just go completely the wrong direction, or just get repetitive and stale. And I think they've done a great job here of being like, you'll be familiar with this, but also there's some bits here that feel like steps outside of our comfort zone and dipping our toe in. Now, positive disclaimer from us both. If you, the In Flames fan that has discovered this, you want to pop along in the comments and say, well, actually, in their 9th album and their 4th track, they had a big chorus, or actually, they did something similar to this on the last record. Mea culpa, on behalf of us both, we weren't to know. But based on our traditional expectation of In Flames, this feels not only progressive, but quite forward-thinking. If I told you this was the 14th album of this band, like sight unseen,
I'd be stunned.
Doesn't feel like it at all, does it? Feels really fresh, really energetic. And again, like the theory that longevity can stymie a band's overall music. There's another band here that that are finding new life in a late second decade or an early third decade here, which I think is just tremendous. This is a very wholesome way to start the year, I think. Because if this was rubbish, I'd have been really disappointed. I'd have been like, oh man, In Flames are shit as well. Like, it's just like, do you know what I mean? Like, but it's good. It was really enjoyable, legitimately great. In parts, legitimately great. I think it's a good album. I think this is like a B minus.
I think that I've got on most of my notes here, I've got this motif of constantly mentioning the term rewarding. And I think this is a rewarding listen if you stick with it. And Pure Light of Mind, just as one of my final points here before we bring this to a close, Pure Light of Mind really kind of accentuates that point, because it does give way to a grandiose rock song quite early on into the track. Pure Light of Mind does. But if you stick with it, it does turn into this song that is as you mentioned, really wholesome, really enjoyable, really good fun. I mean, the ballad lyrics of like "Wave Goodbye with Tearful Eyes," like they're a little bit eye rolly, and like, oh, I do grind my teeth a little bit at them, and that is undoubtedly going to cause some eye rolls, no doubt. But if you just remove yourself from the idea of like, oh, In Flames, I want to do Come Clarity again. If you remove yourself from that mindset, Pure Light of Mind kind of really sums up the record in the sense of like, again, I don't know whether Either Mask was similar to this. I haven't listened to that album, but it was a big surprise to me. This album is a bit of a shock to the system, but it's done really well. So what does it really matter? The songs are really good. They're really fun. The clean sections are beautiful. The riffs still go hard. Anders Freuden still sounds brilliant on his lead vocal sections. It's great. I really, really enjoyed this album. I'm with you, man. If this would have been a sucker or a turkey, I'd have been like, oh, well, why to start the album? In Flames have disappointed us. But so far, obviously we're early days. The new Catatonia record is fantastic. And this is probably the comfortably the second best album I've heard so far this year. So yeah, really, really, really happy with this, man. I think I can't see a world where In Flames like super fans aren't really pleased with this. Really good stuff, man.
Yeah, I can't help but disagree. I can't help but agree with you, mate. Again, it's all about expectations, man. What do you realistically expect from a band at this point? 14th In Flames record. You've had 13 albums, some excellent. I imagine some less than excellent. If I got you to list the 4 or 5 things you wanted, you're getting all of them, bro. Like, you're getting the riffs, you're getting some of the instrumentation, you're getting some good choruses, you're getting a band that's alive, right? You're getting a band that's pushing forward. This is better than I expected, and actually in parts more enjoyable to me than some of the earlier In Flames stuff, because this feels polished. This feels better in that regard. This feels more enjoyable for me. It's a good, really good modern metal record from a really good modern metal band.
That's where we're going to draw this episode to a close. Forgone by In Flames is out on February 10th via Nuclear Blast Records. You are going to love it. It's really, really cool. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. A reminder, the best way to support us is by subscribing, liking, or following, depending on whichever service you are using. Any podcast channel that you use, me and Sam will be there. Our Twitter handle is @Noizze Podcast. The General Noise website's Twitter handle is @Noizze UK. Me and Sam are going to be back with another episode quite soon. Quite a different one to this. We're waiting on the promo for Unit 6's new record to come through, so quite a diversion from In Flames, but we're going to be on top of as much metal and rock reviews this year as we possibly can be. Again, thank you so much for listening. It really means a lot to us. Remember to subscribe, follow, or like, depending on whichever service you are using, and we will be back soon. Thank you very much. We love you. Bye.